Hello, welcome back to the underground, down below. My name is Ian.
I'm Steve.
And we are going to tell you this week about some things that make our game unique.
It's true. The science fiction world is not as crowded a world in role-playing games as one might think for some strange reason, but there are a fair number of cyberpunk and cyberpunk-influenced games and other properties out there, as well as mechanically a few Diceless games. So we're going to talk a little bit about what sets this project apart from others.
So the first thing that sets us apart a little bit is being a Diceless RPG.
There are, 14, 15?
On Wikipedia you can find a list of somewhere just a little bit north of a dozen, and there may be a couple others out there that Wikipedia doesn't list, but it had all the ones that I'd heard of before and some that I hadn't. And let's be honest, most of the RPGs out there on the market, dozens and dozens, just... you could find 3 dozen on the shelves in the room that we're sitting in here because we are RPG enthusiasts, all of which use dice.
And this doesn't apply just to RPGs. Most games use a randomizer of some sort.
A lot of video games have random number generator effects, although the ones that are favored most by competitive and speed-oriented, like people who do this to be really good at it, tend to minimize the random effects. Some things you still need random effects to keep gameplay interesting over multiple playthroughs. So, our game doesn't use random effects and instead focuses on decisions made by the players and the GMs, because one of the core elements of role-playing games is the game aspect, and that's where the random numbers become useful. But another core element is the role-playing, the story crafting. And we wanted to make something that captured just enough game-like element in the way that it gives you a way to set up that story to be fun and to give you that framework to work in, but mostly focus on how you are collaboratively creating a story.
To paraphrase, we didn't want to take the route that some people have taken online to say, just have the mechanics get out of the way and tell the story you want to tell. Frankly, if you're going to do that, get together and write a collaborative novel. Seriously. It'll be more fun and more rewarding for all involved if that's what you want to do.
Exactly, because the focus on getting the mechanics out of the way ultimately leads to getting rid of the mechanics, and instead we wanted to focus on getting the mechanics into the right places to be in the way of things that will stop you from working together.
So that's why we went with Diceless. What's something unique about the Diceless version that we went with that sets us apart from some of the existing Diceless systems out there?
Okay, so the other unique thing is that thing that we were just segging into, talking about the narrative focus of the system, and this sets us apart from both most Diceless systems and most RPG systems in general. So, the core thing that is unique in Downbelow RPG is the fact that the players choose whether they succeed or fail.
There's other games like Amber Diceless, one of the first Diceless role-playing systems on the market, that basically asks the question, are you a bad enough dude to succeed at this task? There's other systems that ask questions like, do you feel strongly enough about this? If you feel strongly enough about it and convince us, you succeed. If you don't, you fail.
There's a... there's the system that I actually took the most inspiration from in creating this was the Marvel Universe role-playing game that uses Power Stones to track your attributes and abilities, and you spend those to accomplish tasks. And that is pretty much the closest that most RPGs, dice-using or dice-less, come to letting the player decide whether they succeed, because for a great number of tasks, you know exactly how many Power Stones you'd have to spend to succeed. Yep. Well, in this game, you know exactly what you need to spend to succeed every time. Use a trait that you and the GM agree is appropriate, and you succeed at the agreed-upon task. The part that's in the GM's control, partly there is a little bit of can you use that trait to succeed, but usually given the breadth of the traits that that there are, if the player thinks that they have a way to explain that it makes sense for the trait to succeed, the GM is not usually going to be saying, no, that's wrong. The GM is just there to help keep things in theme and not let people just do whatever they want. This is one of those structure things that helps your story hang together. The main thing the GM is there to control is the outcomes of your actions and to set up the stakes of, if you succeed here, then you can get this advantage and come out of it with this information in hand and this upper hand. If you fail here, you might learn something about this, but you're going to lose this and this. So it's that sort of unique turning on its head, because most RPGs actually do it the exact other way around. The dice and or the GM usually decide whether you succeed or fail. And in most diceless games, it's the GM who's the ultimate arbiter of, do you succeed, do you fail? And that actually goes all the way back to one of the roots of the hobby in the Free Kriegspiele, where wargamers, before dice started to be popular in doing board game type war games, there was someone who was the master of the games, who was really experienced and knowledgeable about armies and conflict, and would just decide, okay, this is how it's going to work. This is whose advanced succeeds, and this is who's pushed back. Well, modern role-playing games, the GM and the dice tend to decide if you succeed or fail. The player is usually the one asking for what they want to get, although the GM does usually have control over what you will lose if you fail, because usually the GM is the one putting challenges in your path, and the challenges are looking to take away your health points or your stuff or whatever.
In other words, put bluntly, in the traditional role-playing economy that we've got right now, the power is entirely with the dice and the GM, and the players are largely along for the ride and wondering, did I push the right button?
So in this case, we have shifted a major component of that power into the hands of the players, but taken one of the things that the players usually do and rebalanced that over to the GM's side, because we think that the players are going to go in their directions regardless, and the players still get to decide the direction their players go, but the GM ultimately needs to be aware that they are the person putting on the table, this is something you can achieve with this success, and this is something that you could have achieved against you, or that you could lose with this failure. Because really, that's the situation in most RPGs, but we wanted to set that up explicitly, make it clear to the GM that that's part of their responsibility, by taking that other responsibility and putting it squarely with the players.
So, to finally answer the question that we posed at the start of this episode today, the first thing that's unique about us is that this is a completely diceless system. The second thing is that instead of being a pure resource management system, it's very much narrative-based.
And the third thing is that it takes the roles of player and GM and changes whose responsibility is what. So tomorrow we're going to focus on something about the setting and the characters that you play that makes this game unique. And we've probably talked about this before. We've talked about these mechanics before, but we're going to frame it in a way of what makes this game's unique thing. Stay tuned, and thanks for falling through the cracks with us.